Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at a presentation by Cle Erwin,
Okay.
the director of quantum gravity research. And he really paints this picture of humanity at a crossroads,
Yeah.
facing some pretty existential challenges.
Yeah. It's really striking about Irwin's approach is how he really just lays it all out there. He doesn't shy away from just how serious things are.
Yeah.
He really connects these kind of big global trends, pushing us towards potential disaster
Yeah.
to our, daily lives. And that's what's really kind of alarming about it, but also I think what makes it so compelling.
Yeah. He does set that tone right from the start,
Yeah.
talking about, this foot race between our growing understanding of the universe and societal collapse.
Yeah.
And he really doesn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Talking about climate change, political instability, species extinction, pandemics.
Right. And it's not just that it's all these things happening, but the way that they're all interconnected.
Right.
It's not just these isolated problems. It's this complex web of challenges that, feed off of each other.
Right.
And he gives the example of, climate change leading to political instability, which then makes it even harder to address the root causes of, environmental damage.
Yeah. He uses that ongoing war in Ukraine as like a really stark example of how all this plays out, on a global scale.
Right.
With these huge impacts rippling across economies and societies.
Yeah.
It really hits home that this isn't just some, abstract future threat. This is happening right now.
Absolutely. And it's not just war and politics either.
Yeah.
He dives into some pretty alarming statistics about species extinction, rainforest depletion.
Yeah.
Did you know that we've lost something like over 90% of large fish populations since 1972?
Wow.
I mean, that's a just staggering loss of biodiversity in just, a few decades.
It's almost like we're playing Jenga with the planet's ecosystem.
Oh, yeah.
Just pulling out these vital components without, really understanding the consequences until it's too late.
Exactly. And what's even more concerning is, even something like the Amazon rainforest, which we used to think of as this, this giant carbon sink,
Right.
now emits more greenhouse gases than it absorbs.
Yeah. It's really is mind-boggling.
It is. It's like it's shifting from, being a solution to part of the problem.
Right.
And what Irwin does so well is he connects all of these global challenges back to, you, the listener.
Yeah.
He asks, what do these trends mean for you? How might they impact your future?
Right.
And I think that's such a powerful way to cut through all the noise and make these issues feel personal and relevant.
He's basically saying, this isn't science fiction. This is about your life.
Right.
This is about your community. This is about your future generations.
Exactly. It's a call to action, to take these threats seriously and to really start thinking about how they might shape our own lives.
Yeah. And in the midst of all this doom and gloom, he does offer a glimmer of hope. He says that, he argues that humanity has the potential to transcend our destructive ways.
Okay.
He thinks that scientific breakthroughs, coupled with a shift in consciousness, could be our saving grace.
Interesting. So how does he see us getting out of this mess?
Well, that's where he introduces a topic that you might not expect: UFOs.
UFOs. Okay, so we're going there.
Yeah, but he's not approaching it from a fringe perspective.
Okay.
He highlights this recent shift in official acknowledgement of UFOs. He cites examples like congressional hearings, declassified footage.
Yeah, and what's really significant here is that, governments and scientific institutions are, they're not dismissing these sightings as just, speculation anymore.
Right.
They're acknowledging that there are these unexplained phenomena in our skies, and some of these crafts exhibit capabilities that defy our current understanding of physics.
Yeah, he quotes experts saying things like, "These objects are not behaving according to our known laws of physics."
It really makes you wonder, what if these crafts are evidence of some kind of advanced technology, that we haven't even conceived of yet?
Right, and it raises all sorts of questions. Are we alone? What other forms of intelligence might exist out there?
Right.
And are we prepared for contact with, such advanced beings?
Yeah, those are huge questions.
And Irwin ties this back to this theme of accelerating change.
Okay.
He points out how rapidly our understanding of the universe is evolving, suggesting that what seems impossible today could be commonplace tomorrow.
It's true. I mean, think about how much has changed just in the last few decades.
Right, exactly. And that brings us to another area where we're seeing this rapid progress artificial intelligence.
AI, oh yeah, this is where things start to get really mind-blowing.
Yeah, Erwin highlights these incredible advancements in AI, from systems that can pass the Turing test to those that can create art, write scientific papers, and even demonstrate, potential for sentience.
Yeah, I remember that whole story about Google's Lambda. The AI that one Google engineer thought was self-aware,
Right.
I mean, that sparked a huge debate about the nature of consciousness,
Yeah.
and whether machines could truly achieve it.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning,
Right.
Erwin emphasizes that AI's capabilities are growing exponentially, and we're on the verge of breakthroughs that could fundamentally reshape our world.
So it's almost like we're summoning a force that we don't fully understand.
Right. It's both exciting and terrifying,
Yeah.
to think about the possibilities and the potential risks.
Yeah, it really makes you question, what does it actually mean for a machine to be conscious?
Right.
And what does that mean for the future of humanity?
Big questions.
Big questions, and Erwin doesn't shy away from them. He encourages us to grapple with them. He highlights, the potential of AI to solve some of our most pressing problems, but he also acknowledges that we need to proceed with caution,
Right.
Recognizing the potential risks of these technologies that we may not fully comprehend.
He even references, Elon Musk's concerns about AI safety,
Right.
emphasizing the importance of responsible development and, making sure that we don't accidentally create something that could threaten humanity.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah, between harnessing this power and safeguarding our future.
So it sounds like Erwin is painting a picture of a world, on the brink of some pretty profound transformation driven by these, accelerating changes, these looming threats, and these, groundbreaking technological advancements.
Exactly. It's like a wake-up call,
Right.
to really kind of be aware of these challenges and possibilities and to start thinking about how we as individuals and as a collective, might navigate this uncharted territory.
A lot to take in.
It is. So we have
Yeah.
a planet facing multiple crises, unexplained phenomena in our skies, and AI on the verge of reshaping our reality.
So where do we go from here?
Well, that's where Erwin's discussion of the self-simulation hypothesis comes
A
in.
self-simulation hypothesis.
And that's a truly mind-bending concept that we'll explore in part 2.
All right, I am intrigued. Let's take a break and we'll come back to that.
All right, so in part 1, we kind of explored some of those, big challenges and changes that are happening in our world right now. And now we're going to dive into a concept that, might sound like something straight out of science fiction.
Okay.
The self-simulation hypothesis
All right.
is this idea that our reality might actually be, a sophisticated simulation created by, well, ourselves.
Yeah, that's definitely a mind-boggling concept, it really pushes the boundaries of our understanding.
Yeah.
But what I find so fascinating about Erwin's approach is he doesn't just present this as like a theoretical possibility, he actually delves into like the philosophical and scientific underpinnings that make it a surprisingly compelling idea.
Right. So let's break this down a little bit. We've all heard of the simulation hypothesis.
Right.
The idea that we might be living in a computer program created by some advanced civilization.
Right.
But the self-simulation hypothesis takes this like a step further.
Yeah, it does. Instead of positing this like external creator, like in the Matrix,
Right.
the self-simulation hypothesis proposes that the simulators are actually our own descendants, far in the future, who have reached this level of technological sophistication that allows them to create these, incredibly realistic simulations of their past, which would be our present.
So it's like future us is running this giant virtual reality program, and we're the characters in it.
Yeah, it's a wild thought, isn't it?
It's pretty wild. So why would they do that?
Well, Erwin suggests several possibilities. Maybe they're trying to understand their own origins.
Okay.
Or perhaps, they're exploring different historical paths, to see how things might have unfolded differently.
Right. Like imagine having access to a perfectly accurate simulation of the past.
Exactly.
I mean, the possibilities for research and understanding would be endless.
It would be like having a time machine, but instead of physically traveling to the past, you could experience it virtually.
Right.
With complete fidelity, you could study historical events, you could interact with historical figures, maybe even learn from their mistakes.
Right. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, and Erwin points out that if we assume, that these future beings have the capability to create such simulations and that they have some reason to do so, then it actually becomes statistically more likely that we are living in a simulation
Wow.
than in the original base reality.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking argument. that shifts the burden of proof onto those who believe that we're definitely not in a simulation.
Right. It makes you wonder about all this strange and unexplained phenomena that we encounter.
Yeah,
Could some of these things be glitches in the matrix?
right.
Or, maybe intentional clues left by the simulators for us to discover?
It's a fun thought experiment, isn't it?
It is. And Erwin doesn't just rely on, probability arguments.
Right.
He also explores the limitations of materialism. This idea that reality is fundamentally made of matter and energy. And he argues that information might be a more fundamental building block of the universe.
So instead of thinking of the universe as this giant clockwork mechanism made of tiny particles,
Right.
we should think of it as this giant computer program running on information.
Yeah, like a giant simulation.
Exactly. And this shift in perspective has, some really profound implications for our understanding of consciousness.
Okay, how so?
Well, if reality is fundamentally information, then consciousness, which we can also think of as a form of information processing, might play a much more active role in shaping reality than we previously thought.
So you're saying our thoughts, which are presumably non-physical, can actually influence the physical world?
Yeah, it sounds almost mystical, doesn't it?
It does a little bit.
But Erwin draws on some really intriguing ideas from quantum mechanics,
Okay.
particularly the measurement problem.
Right, the observer effect.
Exactly, where the act of observing a quantum system seems to influence its behavior.
Right, like just by observing a particle, we change its state.
Exactly, and Erwin suggests that, this might not be just some quirk of quantum mechanics,
Right.
but actually a fundamental principle of reality.
Okay.
He proposes that the universe is constantly evolving through this series of choices or observations made by, conscious entities at all levels, from, subatomic particles to human beings.
So you're saying that our thoughts, our choices, are actually collapsing wave functions and influencing the course of reality?
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
But, Erwin suggests that it's worth considering.
Okay.
He even introduces this concept of trans-temporal feedback loops.
Okay, hold on. Now we're talking about time travel.
Haha.
How can our choices today affect something that already happened?
I know it's definitely a challenging concept to grasp.
Yeah.
But remember, we're operating under the assumption that reality might not be as straightforward as we perceive it.
Right.
If reality is fundamentally information, then maybe time is more like a dimension that can be navigated in ways that defy our everyday experience.
Okay, so if our thoughts can influence the past and the future, does that mean we have more control over our destinies than we realize?
That's one of the really intriguing possibilities that the self-simulation hypothesis opens up.
Right.
It suggests that our choices, our actions, even our thoughts, might be shaping not just our individual lives,
Right.
but the very fabric of reality itself.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is,
But it also makes me wonder about free will.
right? The age-old question.
Yeah, if we're all part of this giant simulation, do we really have any choice in what we do?
Erwin doesn't explicitly address the question of free will versus determinism,
Okay.
but I think his framework definitely points toward a more nuanced perspective.
Yeah.
He describes reality as a probability landscape.
Okay.
This vast field of possibilities where our choices determine which path we actualize.
It's like we're all playing this choose-your-own-adventure game,
Right.
but with infinite choices and outcomes.
Right. That's a great analogy, and this is where Erwin introduces another fascinating concept, thermodynamic efficiency.
Okay, thermodynamic efficiency. So like the universe is a lazy programmer always looking for shortcuts.
Kinda, haha,
Yeah.
yeah. And Erwin suggests that this principle applies not just to, physical systems, but also to our thoughts and actions.
Okay.
He proposes that by aligning ourselves with this flow of thermodynamic efficiency,
Okay.
we can actually live more fulfilling and impactful lives.
I'm not sure I completely understand what aligning ourselves with thermodynamic efficiency means, in practice. Could you give me an example?
Sure. Erwin uses the example of a physicist at his research center who has to drive, up a mountain every day to get to work.
Okay.
From a purely thermodynamic perspective, it would be more efficient for the physicist to just stay home,
Right.
and avoid expending all that energy.
Right, but the physicist has a job to do research to conduct goals to achieve.
Right.
It's not just about minimizing, energy expenditure. It's about pursuing something meaningful.
Right. And that's where Erwin's concept of emergent consciousness information, or EC, comes in.
Okay.
He argues that human beings, and presumably other conscious entities, have this capacity to override the dictates of basic thermodynamics in order to pursue these higher level goals and abstractions.
So it's like our thoughts and desires, our drive to create and achieve, create a kind of friction in the system,
Okay.
pushing us to do things that wouldn't necessarily happen if we were just mindless particles following the laws of physics.
Precisely. And Erwin suggests that this friction is actually a good thing.
Okay.
It's what drives creativity, innovation, and progress.
Right.
It's what allows us to build civilizations, explore the universe, create art and music.
So are you saying that our drive to defy basic thermodynamics,
Right.
to create order out of chaos,
Yeah.
is a fundamental force in the universe?
That's a pretty bold claim, but it's one that Erwin seems to be making.
Wow.
He even suggests that, this drive to create meaning and complexity might be what ultimately gives rise to the self-simulating consciousness. That is running our universe.
We're all cogs in this giant cosmic machine,
Yeah.
but our individual choices are still important
Yes.
because they're contributing to the evolution of this higher consciousness.
It's a pretty profound concept to contemplate, isn't it?
It is.
It suggests that our lives have a significance that extends far beyond our limited human perspectives.
Right. And it leads to some pretty fascinating questions about, the nature of purpose and meaning in a self-simulated universe.
Huge questions.
Yeah, this is starting to feel very spiritual, almost religious.
It is, isn't it? And Erwin acknowledges the spiritual implications of the self-simulation hypothesis.
Okay.
He suggests that, it offers a way to reconcile science and spirituality,
Okay.
proposing that, the universe is not this cold and different machine,
Right.
but a living, evolving system that is imbued with consciousness at all levels.
Yeah, I can definitely see how this hypothesis, could resonate with people who are seeking meaning and purpose,
Mm-hmm.
in a world that often feels random and chaotic.
Ab-
It's like, even if our lives are part of a simulation,
Hmm.
we still have a role to play, a contribution to make
Right.
to this larger cosmic story.
And that contribution, according to Erwin, should be guided by a principle of service to others.
Okay.
He argues that, as we evolve as individuals and as a species, we should strive to become more selfless and compassionate, working to create a better future for ourselves and for all beings.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah.
It's like the self-simulation hypothesis is calling us to step up and become the best versions of ourselves, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of the entire simulated universe.
Exactly. And Erwin emphasizes that, this shift towards service to others isn't just some moral imperative.
Right.
It's also a matter of survival.
Okay.
He argues that the selfish, destructive behaviors that are driving us towards societal and ecological collapse are ultimately unsustainable.
So it's not just about being nice.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we are all interconnected
Right.
and that our individual actions have consequences,
Mhm.
for the whole.
Exactly. And, it's interesting because this idea of interconnectedness actually ties in really nicely with another concept that Erwin discusses in his presentation, the holographic principle.
Okay, the holographic principle. That sounds interesting. Tell me more about that. Welcome back to our deep dive into Cle Erwin's presentation.
Hmm.
So in the last two parts, we've talked about, some pretty heavy stuff. The challenges facing humanity, the potential of AI, and the mind-bending idea of the self-simulation hypothesis. And, Erwin doesn't let up in this final part.
No, he doesn't. He takes us even further down the rabbit hole by exploring the different forms of consciousness that might exist in the universe.
Right, and it's really interesting because he challenges our very human-centered view of consciousness. He suggests that it might not be limited to biological beings like us.
Yeah.
He even speculates about this possibility of trans-temporal consciousness, where beings exist across vast stretches of time, their awareness not bound by, our linear perception of time.
It's a really wild idea to wrap your head around.
It is, imagine a being whose consciousness is like spread across time,
Yeah.
experiencing multiple moments simultaneously. It's like the ultimate cosmic consciousness witnessing the unfolding of the universe from a perspective we can barely fathom.
It really challenges our notion of what it means to exist, doesn't it?
It does. And Erwin even suggests that these higher forms of consciousness might be able to influence events in our, quote unquote, local reality, perhaps even subtly guiding our evolution.
It's like an idea of guardian angels or spirit guides, but with a more scientific and mind-expanding twist.
Right. It makes you wonder, could some of those unexplained events in history or even in our own lives be attributed to the influence of these trans-temporal beings?
It's a fascinating possibility, and Erwin connects this concept to intuition as well.
Okay, intuition, how so?
He suggests that, our intuitive insights might be more than just hunches or gut feelings,
Okay.
He proposes that intuition could actually be a fleeting connection to these trans-temporal realms, a way for our future or higher selves to communicate with us.
So like when we have a strong intuitive feeling about something, it could actually be a message from our future selves, kind
Yeah.
of nudging us towards a particular path or decision.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to think about intuition, and it makes me wonder if we should be paying more attention to those subtle inner voices.
Yeah, for sure. Erwin definitely seems to think. So he emphasizes the importance of trusting our intuition, even when it defies logic or reason.
Right, because it might be coming from a place of greater knowledge or understanding.
Right. He describes it as like this strange loop, a feedback loop across time, where our present choices are influenced by our future goals and desires.
Right, it's almost like we're unconsciously being pulled towards a predetermined destiny.
Okay, but if our future selves are influencing our choices, does that mean we don't actually have free will?
You know, it's a tricky question, but Irwin doesn't completely dismiss the concept of free will.
Okay.
He suggests that while there might be this larger cosmic plan unfolding, we still have the agency to make choices within that framework.
Yeah.
He describes it as navigating a probability landscape where, countless possibilities exist, and our choices determine which path we ultimately take.
Right. So it's not like everything is predetermined.
No, not necessarily. It's more like we're given a set of options and we get to choose which one we want to experience.
Okay, that makes sense. And how does this idea of thermodynamic efficiency that we talked about before,
Yeah.
how does that fit into this broader picture of consciousness and free will?
Well, Irwin suggests that while the universe strives for efficiency, our conscious choices can introduce a kind of friction into the system. We're not just these passive particles following the path of least resistance. Our desires, our aspirations, our drive to create and achieve, all of these things push against the natural flow of things.
So it's like we're adding this layer of complexity and meaning to the simulation.
Yeah, exactly. Pushing it beyond its default programming.
And Irwin suggests that this friction, this drive to defy the easy path, is actually a vital part of the universe's evolution.
Yeah, he argues that it's what drives progress, innovation, and the emergence of higher forms of consciousness.
That's a beautiful and empowering thought. Our struggles, our striving, our relentless pursuit of meaning, it's all contributed to something greater than ourselves.
Exactly. It's not just about our individual lives, but about the evolution of the entire universe.
But it raises the question, what is the ultimate goal of this cosmic evolution?
Yeah.
Where is it all heading?
Irwin doesn't offer a definitive answer, but he suggests that the universe is constantly striving towards greater complexity, greater understanding, greater connection.
Okay.
And he emphasizes the importance of aligning our individual actions with this overarching purpose.
So like living in harmony with nature, cultivating compassion and empathy, acting in service to others.
Exactly. He suggests that these aren't just moral imperatives, but fundamental principles that are woven into the fabric of the universe itself.
So by aligning ourselves with these principles, we contribute to the stability and evolution of the simulation.
Right, creating a more harmonious and fulfilling reality for all beings.
It's a powerful message that resonates really deeply. Even if you don't fully subscribe to the self-simulation hypothesis, it encourages us to think bigger, to act with greater purpose, and to recognize the interconnectedness of all things.
Exactly. And Irwin leaves us with this final thought-provoking question. If the simulators are indeed our future selves, what message might they be trying to send us through this simulated reality? Are they offering guidance, sharing wisdom, or simply observing and learning from our choices?
It's a question that really makes you think, it prompts us to reflect on our own lives, our choices, and our role in this grand cosmic experiment.
And maybe by embracing the principles of compassion, service, and a deep respect for the interconnected web of life, we can begin to decipher the message and create a future worthy of the incredible potential that lies within us all.
Well said. That's a great note to end on. So thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of exploration. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to ponder those profound questions that Irwin raises.
And maybe, as we continue to explore the mysteries of the universe or delve deeper into the nature of reality, we'll discover that the answers were within us all along.
Thanks for listening, everybody.